Do you ever wonder what happened to your friends from high school? I mean, you were so close. You laughed together, you cried together, you shared some of the best years of your lives together. And yet, somehow through life, you just lost touch. Now it's time to relive those moments once again. Introducing the podcast that takes you back in time to the place where it all began. This is Class Reunion. We're bringing you all the gossip, secrets, and scandals from your high school days that you won't want to miss. Join us as we catch up with old classmates and dive into the wildest stories from our high school days. From those legendary parties to the infamous cliques, we're spilling all the tea on who's who and what really went down. So grab a seat, turn your volume up, and get ready for a trip down memory lane. Class Reunion, the podcast that reunites us all. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Class Reunion. I have with me today best-selling book author Annie Baker. She has a great real estate book called The Next Chapter Real Estate. It's also her group name in the Bay Area. She is a top-selling producer in the Bay Area of real estate, specializing in senior real estate. And I can't wait to have you listen to what she has to offer in terms of things that we deal with our family, with downsizing, the decisions we have to have for assisted living, etc. So I really wanted Annie to be on to talk to you about what she has provided in that market. And it is fantastic. You will have several takeaways. So I'm looking forward to having the conversation. So welcome, Annie, to Class Reunion.
Hi, Leanne. Thanks for having me. I love your podcast.
Thank you. Well, we connected because you had listened to the story about me moving my father and going through all of that with hospice care and assisted living and having to sell his house during COVID. So we connected on that conversation. And then when I learned about all of your additional credentials and how you've really found this niche that's necessary in the real estate market, I was like, Annie, we have to talk about this because a lot of us have gone through this and didn't have the tools that you have manufactured and created and are available on your website, or they're going to have that experience coming up soon. And timing is everything. So somebody, might not think this is where their parents are at. And in the next week or so, that could change drastically. So I wanted to just kind of dive into how you decided in this market to specialize. You have the senior real estate specialist degree, SRES it's called.
Yeah.
And I want to emphasize that because everyone's a realtor, right? But when you say, I don't mind having my friend list it and it's a house that's in a trust, there is so much knowledge behind just that concept that not every agent is equipped to handle it. So I'm not discrediting going with a friend of yours, but having somebody that really, really understands that market from a buyer and seller perspective, I want to dive into. And then I want to talk about all of the preparatory tools that you've created to help families navigate that step in their life. Why don't you just walk through how you even discovered and came upon wanting to deal with the senior market?
Sure. So I became a realtor, I guess it was back in like 2002-ish, and I was living in Arizona at the time, kind of going through some financial struggles with my then husband. And I was like, I just got to make money. I'm going to get into real estate. And I was always fascinated with real estate from the investment standpoint. Never thought I'd grow up to be a realtor. It wasn't my chosen field. But back against the wall, I've had to start making money. And then in 2005, we moved to the Bay Area. I was originally from this area too. So we came back here and I, just got back into real estate here and was just doing whatever I could. I mean, I was that notorious realtor of like, I just help people buy and sell houses. Whoever needs to buy and sell, I'll help them. And it was a grind. And I didn't like showing properties, especially at 6:00 on a Tuesday night when I had kids at home or whatnot. So in 2010, I just got referred this woman, 82-year-old woman, Lillian, had a 4,000 square foot custom home, 40, 50 years old home. And she's moving to a 450 square foot room in an independent assisted living community, right? So I was like, oh my gosh, Lillian. And her children were all grown adults living far away. So I just was like, oh my gosh, I need to help this woman, make it easy. It wasn't just going to be a normal transaction. And that
Yeah.
began learning about a senior move manager. I had no idea that even existed. They specialize in helping in these situations, whether it's like downsizing or just helping to declutter, or when the loved ones passed away and it's an inherited property, they're fantastic. So anyway, that was the beginning. And by 2012, I was like, this is only what I want to do, and really started marketing myself with that. It probably took to close till about 2016 that this is pretty much all I've done.
Mm-hmm.
The only time I really work with a buyer is when it's the senior downsizing and they're staying local. Otherwise, I refer any regular client out. So
yeah,
this is my wheelhouse, and not all realtors understand it. I didn't even get the SRES designation till I don't even remember when, like 2016 or 15, because you learn something, but it wasn't practical knowledge. But I thought, I better have that designation just in case. And I went and got another one. I can't remember, see something about probate. So I do probate too. That's a whole nother animal. So that's when someone passes without the house being in a trust. So people make sure the house is in a trust.
I want to talk about the different terms, because, we hear them, but then like, until you're really in it, it doesn't affect you. So you think you understand it. But one of the things I wanted to say is we both understood each other, because you're in California where that's prevalent. I'm in Florida and I see it all the time. And so, and a lot of my friends in the northern states, their parents live down here. And so for them to be listening, anybody who has family in Florida or California, to make those decisions out of state, it's important, because this is, they're both two sunshine states. And so the probability of our parents ending up in an assisted living in one of these areas is high. And, a phone call every once in a while to say that everything's okay isn't going to be enough. You really need to know where everything is, what the proper terminology is, what they really have in place, because they may think they have, you're in the will, it's all taken care of. So, let's first start with the basic, art of downsizing in general, and then we'll go into the terms and where the paperwork is and everything. I think that's the most critical piece, that it is an emotional act that has to take place. So are you there to assess the house and say, we're going to, do you have a way to donate or estate sale, or how active are you in coaching that step of downsizing?
100%. Like, I'm there every step of the way. I will bring in other people when I feel like it's beneficial. Especially like the senior move manager. She is so good. I mean, there's 2 women in my area that I work with. And that's a national designation, that a senior move manager. So you can look up in your local area and find someone. But they are, they have angel wings on their back, and most of them, like the ones the 2 I work with, they are so compassionate and so kind, but they also know the end game is to get as much stuff either donated, sold, given to family members, and they know how to nudge people the right way. So, and especially, when the parent is still alive, a lot of times, depending on how old they are, one of the biggest issues I see with really, probably over 80-year-old kind of generation, they are so afraid of losing their freedom and their choices and their decision making. And so that's like, they don't want to be told, well, you're not going to need this couch, and why do you want to put it in storage? They don't want to be told that.
I use those words, and it was the wrong choice for sure. To say you're not going to need it is the worst. I don't know why I want to
be told that, right?
Yeah,
It's like, and you start to realize those little words, like, they'll hang everything on that word. Don't tell me what I need or don't need. And so they have a way of just saying, they just position it better for them, that I've seen them help people really get rid of a lot more than they thought they were going to. And then the flip side is when it's an inherited property, some kids, kids, we're talking people oftentimes
adults,
in their 60s, that are so afraid to get rid of one thing because they're afraid their parents are watching from up above and don't you dare treat my stuff like it's just going to donation.
Mm-hmm.
So they're afraid of that. And they sometimes get so sentimental. I mean, about the craziest thing. I've had a family with three, 60-year-old adults fighting over the punch bowl because it was such a staple their whole life. And so there's ways that, we help them see, options. You could rotate it once a year, you could just sell it. No one gets it. Or what do you want? So it's just weird how people get really hung up on certain things. But, I've had experience, so I can talk people through certain things, but a lot of times I bring in that senior move manager. And also, if they are moving to a community, sometimes the adult children feel like, well, they have to go drive their parent around, but there's such a weird dynamic that the parent is so afraid of letting the adult child feel like they're the parent now and telling them, well, this community seems like your best option. There's a senior placement advisor, and it's like a buyer's realtor. They literally have relationships with all the different communities. They know the big ones, the little ones, the this, the that. And they can talk to your parents with you present and find out what's important to them when they do downsize and go see different communities. And I highly recommend doing that way before you think a parent needs it, will need it, may never need it, may never leave their house. But I've done it with my parents. I'm like, I know you think that you're going to, die in your house and it's fine. But you never know. What if one parent dies and the other parent's alone? You might want to be in a community. So why don't we just start looking at some? And my parents are still alive in their 80s, and it's a battle for me, even though I have all this expert knowledge that I have to be really careful and navigate. But it's so important to be prepared with that downsizing. It may never come, but if you have these conversations, and it's the same thing with like the legal documents, like you mentioned, the trust, the way I explain it to people is, because a lot of people say, oh no, I have a will. And I'm like, a will protect nothing and do nothing other than someone gets this or that if you have it that specific. But a living trust is like getting a warehouse and putting all your houses, all your cars, all your bank accounts, all your jewelry, everything in one place. And someone knows where the key to that warehouse is. But if you just have a will, that's just a piece of paper somewhere in your house. That does nothing to help people, because the other thing is sometimes if a parent passes and they don't have the trust with their bank accounts or everything, the adult children can't access their funds. And if they need their parents' funds to like pay for a funeral or they need to do something, you can't access the funds. So again, it's all in one place, and it's just
why do you think people rely on the validity of a will? Like why then have a will?
I think because people think that, well, I said who gets what, that they'll get all my money, or they're going to split it 3 ways or this, but that's just a direction. That's just like the instructions, but you need the key for the kingdom.
Right. True.
And also the medical health care directive, that's kind of all part of it. Medical health care, people say, oh, but I'm healthy, I'm fine. It's like, I used to say this to my kids every year. I'd always tell them, okay, this is where all my legal documents are. My kids are, in late 20s. And for years, they'd always be like, Mom, you are the healthiest person I know. And I'd be like, that has nothing to do with whether I'm going to die. Because every year I'd pay my life insurance in September, and I would sort of just update all my information and give it to them. And they just were like, enough of this, Mom. But I'm like, you guys, I get hit by a bus tomorrow. And I don't live like fearing death. I live because I'm prepared that when something happens, I know my kids and my loved ones aren't going to have to sift through all this paperwork to figure what Mom wants. Like, I mean, that's my little book I have, the next chapter planner, not to change it, but it's like I'm prepared so that it's easier.
Because it's not just planning the funeral, right? Or knowing the bank. It's what's on autopay. Who do I need to contact about, auto insurance? Like people change things, right? So if I say I have Geico today, by the time something may have happened, I may have switched carriers. I may, changed who I paid the mortgage to. Mortgage lenders love to sell, their
totally.
right. And so you don't always know who you're dealing with that too. But there are two things here that I want to talk about, which is the book and the workbook, because we're going to provide those as a giveaway. And if you drop next chapter in one of the comments, whether it's on YouTube or Facebook group or whatever it is, we're going to send a journal or a book to you, because we're all in this stage and we're in it. So it's helpful for us to get a head start. Like you just said, we don't know. My mom was the healthiest one and she went before my dad. So you just don't know.
That's actually interesting. I don't know if your parents were still together or not, but
yeah,
that is a really big statistic that 70% of the time the healthier spouse goes first of the couple. So, and now once I learned that, I was like, every time I turn around, it's like, oh my God, someone says mother just died. She was so healthy. The dad's been, well, it's because she was under so much pressure taking care of the sicker spouse. And so 70% of the time they go first. So if you're sitting here listening thinking, well, my mom knows all this stuff, so I'm sure my dad will pass first because he's not healthy. My mom will know everything and then we'll worry about it. Be careful. If your mom passes first and then your dad is just as in the dark as you are, it's like, I want people to be able to mourn. Because I've seen the aftermath for 10 years almost, right?
Yeah.
Of these families that have dealt with it, that it's like, if you're being prepared, is not morbid, it's not depressing, because it's just be prepared. Just take that little time in your life to do it, and then you're good.
The joke I made a lot was, I think my dad was still asking for passwords while my mom was taking her last breath. Like,
my God.
He was just, because she was the computer savvy one and he wasn't. And so he just was, she did have things on autopay and she knew how to, do certain passwords and all that stuff. And so he was very, very uptight about that. But show your workbook, because I want to start there. That's part one of just even having passwords and having accounts and all of that. And she's got different covers. I'm going to share her website for sure, because her website is a lot of the real estate business as well. But all of this is available. So it is like, every little thing, who these people are that you need to have those conversations
who the attorneys
with.
are, who the, your financial planner, or what,
yes.
If you have your own like Charles Schwab account, what's your login information?
Yes, because it's like getting into Fort Knox with those people, even with the proper documentation. Yes.
Oh my gosh, exactly. Everyone wants a copy of the death certificate. So you have anything. It also talks about online banking. So your online banking, and then what bills are on auto pay and what you pay manually. Because my girlfriend's really high up at State Farm, and she has had her clients come to her and be like, oh my gosh, my mom died last year and I just found out her car insurance has been on auto pay and her insurance person didn't tell us and didn't cancel it. And so I think there's a lot of impersonal relationships that people don't, with the business, owner, your insurance person or whoever, that doesn't realize, oh wait, we got to get that canceled. And some people are mourning, they don't like look into things. They don't look into anything for 6 to 8 months because they're just handled all. And it's like, oh my God, it's just,
Do you have, it sounds silly, but I don't know how many toll roads do you have the toll road philosophy that passes in California or no?
Well, we have the odd one, but not really. Yeah.
Okay.
I know back east, they're a lot bigger. Yeah.
We have what we call Sun Pass for the state of Florida, because everything's a toll road. And I kid you not, talk about things that fall through the cracks, because my dad was really organized. So I was grateful, but to just cancel, you keep like, I don't know, $50 on there and it just automatically, when it gets low, it'll repay. So I'm sitting here thinking, as I was selling his car, I saw the sticker and I was like, oh shoot, I got to cancel that Sun Pass. So I just went online to cancel it. They made me show up in person with a death certificate. Like I couldn't just discontinue. Exactly. And it was the main office and it was like an hour away from where we were. And I went in for 2 seconds. I showed it. They're like, okay, they didn't even make a copy of it. And I left. It was like nuts, but you get caught up on those things that are still on autopay that you don't think of. Like, so few
Totally.
people in Chicago that have that same
Oh
type
God,
of
toll
pay,
roads is
right? I
everywhere.
mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
it could very well need a death certificate. Those types of things are so crazy. But you have
Yeah.
different covers. You have both feminine and
Yeah,
fun,
I
you
did
know.
both the two ones I started with were one feminine cover and one masculine, just called Next Chapter Planner. And then
Yeah.
I had friends were like, Annie, come on, you gotta make it more fun for some people. So then I created one that's just God don't want me yet.
Yes.
And then the devil don't want me yet. And God don't want me yet. That is my bestseller. Everyone seems to like that one. I say God don't want me yet, but when he does, I'll be ready. And so,
I love it. I love it.
yeah. So those are things I've just sort of learned from, the real estate side of, part of that was just me because I had a weird thing. I just wanted to be prepared being, before I died, but also just seeing the disarray, the anxiety,
Yeah.
the stress of closing out a loved one's estate.
Yes.
And people are just afraid to have the conversations. And so, that was, my parents are so used to me talking about being prepared. So there
Yeah.
was no problem with them. But my father-in-law, he's like, oh gosh, like, I'll deal with that later. But then I had my husband, like take one of the workbooks and say, hey, Dad, I've been filling out mine. I was thinking it'd be a good time we could fill out yours too. And so then it takes that, I might die before you, Dad. We don't know.
Well,
So
that's why
let's just be prepared. And it so kind of
yeah.
has helped. Like, yeah.
That's why I think it's timely conversation because yes, we all have aging parents, but we all have children, or not we all, but many of us have kids as well. And you still want to have you want to have that cycle continue that you're preparing your children. So
Well, don't laugh. I've given it to my kids to fill out.
oh,
And like I said, they're 28 and well now 30. But I'm like, you guys, if something happened to you, I'm not barely going to get out of bed for the rest of my
right.
life. So
Right.
if I have to go do anything to help you because they're not married or and I'm like, yeah, I
Well,
need
that's
some
a really
info.
good point.
Yeah. So they like answered like three questions
Well,
because they're
three's
all big.
better than
But I'm like,
none.
yeah, I know. But I'm like, we're all in we're all in the same boat. We're heading the same direction. Just who's going to get there first, we don't know.
Right. I want to go back to the trust for a minute because from both a buyer and seller perspective, because I was in real estate, I told you for a little bit,
Yeah.
and you think you kind of you read the MLS and you have to mandate that it's in a trust, correct? You have to warn the
Yeah,
sellers
so if
that
it's
it's
an inherited property, yeah, you can say it's in
yeah.
a trust. If it's just like a senior's downsizing, their house is in a trust, there's just another document, at least in California, that we
Mm-hmm.
sign, and it shows that it's in a trust. But that's a pretty normal transaction. But if it's an inherited property and it's in a trust, totally different.
Yeah.
The adult children do not have to fill out they the most important disclosures they don't have to fill out. And it actually can hurt them if they do, because some adult children say, but I was here all the time. So I remember we had this leak and stuff. And I said, but it wasn't your house. You don't know. And I've talked to numerous lawyers about this. You don't want them to disclose that because maybe they remember it differently, or maybe they didn't know that they did something else. And you just don't want to say something without knowing for sure. So that's why I always make sure we do inspections before we put it on the market, because then the inspection will show whatever. And hey, we didn't live in the house. So we're not filling out all the disclosures that you've probably seen in all the other houses you're looking at, but we do have the inspection. So it will say what they see in terms of leaks or any issues, things, appliances not working or any of that. So, some realtors I totally will see that, oh my gosh, they had them fill out all the disclosures and they didn't live there. And
Yeah.
that's a liability to them as sellers, even.
Great point. I didn't even think of that at all. And is it decision by, a group decision, whether the offer would be accepted? Does everybody has to sign off on it? Or how does that work when you have 4 siblings and you have an offer?
So it depends on how it's written in the trust, first of all, that
Okay.
usually there's the administrator of the trust. So sometimes the parents just designate all the kids to be administrators. And that is really tricky because you do have too many cooks in the
Right.
kitchen sometimes. So usually will be like that they're equal beneficiaries, but there's
Okay.
one administrator. So the administrator typically only has to be the one signing everything. But it's a conversation for me to have. Are you going to make the decision, or is a decision you have to call all the beneficiaries, all your siblings too? How's that going to work? Because then that will help me educate the buyer's agent submitting an offer. Just so you know, I've got 4 people that have to make this decision. Give me at least 48 hours to respond. I've got one in, Southern California, one in Michigan, and
Right.
we're all,
Right.
and they all work. And so give me some extra time. Or I'll say, hey, we just have one decision maker. It should be pretty good. But that's a great point, because a lot of buyer's agents don't even know to ask me that.
No,
They have
I was
no
in that.
idea.
So
And they're
that's the
like,
only
why
reason
aren't you?
why. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I
They'll
had
be
one
like, why are you
holdout and
taking
I
so
was
long?
like, well, I didn't know that because naturally my buyers had already fallen in love with the house. And so they're thinking this should be an easy thing. And 2 out of the 3 said, yeah, this is a great price. We couldn't get a hold of the third wanted to think about it forever. And I felt bad because I knew they wanted to do this quickly and she was expecting, but I didn't know that each person had to make that decision. I just thought there was one person for the trust. And, and of course it's the one that thinks they know the market the most and
Yeah.
we should be getting X, Y, and Z. And I was like, oh, gee, you don't even live in Florida. Yeah.
And that's a great point, because if the listing agent specializes in these type of sales, they will have handled all this. I handled this. I actually had 4 brothers inherit a house here. 3 were great. 1 lived in Florida and thought he knew everything. And before we went to list the house, oh no, we should do this. And I said, I'm so sorry. I cannot work with you. I can't work in a situation like this, because he is going to undermine me at every step.
Yeah.
You either can trust me because I'm really good at what I do, or not. So I need to take a step back. You as 4 brothers need to sort this out, how decisions are going to move forward. If 3 of you agree with me and 1 doesn't, and you're going to let the 1 win, it's not for me, because I'm not going to keep trying to manage all of you. And they came right back. They're like, no, we got him under control. He's not happy, but he agrees. And I would have the conversation with him in Florida and say, I need you to understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. I would explain it, blah, blah, blah. But I said, it's really easy to be like a keyboard warrior, like to sit back and look at housing on Zillow and think that you know. And I said, I am so competitive. I'm going to do such a great job for you, but you also have to trust me. But I think a lot of realtors are just so glad they get a listing. They'll just sort of cave, but it's a problem, because a buyer brings the offer and now you can't get them all to agree.
Right.
And it's an issue. That's probably what happened to you. And
yeah. I felt very caught off guard. Like it was the hardest part of the deal. Like, they put in an offer, 2 out of 3 said yes, they're ready to go, and then stop, and it's an emotional stop. It's not a bank stop. It's not a loan issue with the lender.
God.
It's
so emotional for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I always say to my clients. I always say, like, I'm your quarterback. I will help. I will bring all the pieces together, whether it's the siblings. I mean, it's very rare to get 3, all the siblings that are on the same page. It almost never happens. And a lot of times one sibling is living in the house because they moved in the last few years to care for mom and dad. And the other siblings live away, have their own houses. And now the parents have passed, and the one sibling in the house almost always feels like they should just get to keep living there. And so that's a whole nother thing. So I've worked around that, and I have great solutions in those situations. I do have a YouTube channel, and I get kids, adult children from all over the US calling, God, they won't leave. They did it. And I have definitely some great tips that help. And then sometimes you have to get a lawyer involved if it gets that bad. But if you have a realtor that's just a friend of the family and puts the house up and they haven't managed this siblings, and it can really cause some serious issues.
So I will also drop her YouTube link, because she makes another great point, which is why I wanted to have her on, because it's not just real estate. It's storylines. It's things that you're going to encounter with relationships and market and downsizing. It's all encompassing. It's not just about listing the house, and there's some personal stories in there. So I love that channel. So I will definitely put that forth. So through all of this, and you're realizing that you're in your space that you really like, you decided to write a book. So can you tell us about the next chapter?
Yeah. So that's it. When I really did start specializing in this, and I realized how emotional it was for all the
Yes.
people involved, whatever stage you're at. It's very emotional. And it always had this heaviness of sadness too, like, oh, and I'd always be like, hey, you guys, it's not that, this is the next chapter. It's going to be
Right.
positive. It's fun. Like, let's look at the positives essentially. And so I would say, next chapter real estate. That's what I do. And so I wrote a book called Next Chapter Real Estate. I don't know if it's the best title, but
No, I
because I
think
think
it
a lot of
is.
people think it's just about real estate, but it is a little bit more about helping prepare your parent, getting their house as they age. Things like tripping hazards in the house, like pulling up all little area carpets. I mean, those notorious. I mean, so often they trip,
Yes.
fall, they end up breaking a hip, and I mean that's really not good when a elderly person breaks a bone. So I talk a little bit about that. I talk about all the people that can help, like the senior move managers, the senior placement advisors, anyone. I talk about online estate sales versus in-person estate sales. I have a
Hmm.
fantastic online estate sale company. They're all over North
Which is really
America.
starting to become the trend because I think more and more people aren't wanting people in their house. I don't really know why, but COVID is where I saw a big spike in the
Yeah.
online.
And also, at least in our area, the cost of doing an in-person one is, if you need any sort of help, I mean, is so expensive. Unless
Yeah.
you have a lot of high ticket items in your house, you'll probably end up owing them at the end.
Yes. Yes.
And that's another thing. When you have an inherited property that you do need to get things out, it's so hard for people to hear, but it's more expensive to take things to the dump than to give things away for free. So because some people are like, yeah, but this is from Ethan Allen, this whole, dining room set, it's beautiful still. So what, it's 40
Right.
years old, it's in great shape. It's like, if nobody wants that, the cost of getting that out of your house is going to be more. So I'm always like, the more you can
Oh,
just get
taking
out
it
for
to, yeah,
free.
right.
Yeah.
Getting a
And
truck
so,
and going to, yeah, Salvation
and
Army or whatever. Yeah. Hmm.
exactly. And if you
Hmm.
take maybe just other things just to the dump, like all the old cleaning
Hmm.
supplies or things,
Hmm.
whatever, that if the dump costs are so high, at least here in California, that it's
Hmm.
like so I really like the online estate sale company because they will like group like things together, and you might not get high amount for it, but you get it out. And then on the day of pickup, if anything hadn't sold, they'll offer it to free to people. So you get stuff out of the house. And
Yes.
that's the bigger thing. And almost always people walk away with some money in their pocket from the online estate sales. But like I said, a lot of the in-person ones, unless you
Yeah.
enjoy doing that and you're willing to do it for numerous weekends,
Yeah.
you're not going to walk away with that much money.
Well, and a lot of gated communities aren't a fan of it either. So
Oh,
sometimes
true.
that's
Yeah.
not okay. So before we get onto a personal discussion on class reunion, so probate that begins when there just wasn't any directives in place, and so the house then goes to
Well, you
probate or
could have
walk
a
through.
will. Yeah, you could
Yeah.
have a will in place, but that won't protect you from probate. Probate, you have to have a trust. Double check with your state. I
Yeah.
think it's the same in every state,
The
but if it's
disclaimer
not,
is in
yeah,
there.
yeah.
Yeah.
But probate is just brutal. It's like 1.5%. It's the cost of doing probate is about 1.5% of the total value of the estate. So we're talking, house value, cars value, financial, about 1.5%. So here where I am, it's hard not to have a house be at least $1 million. I mean, the average house that we
Right.
probably grew up in, that my house was probably similar to yours. Now around here is around $2.5 to $3 million, even if it
Hmm.
hasn't been maintained. So you're looking at significant. I think they say like around the average is around 50,000. I remember I had a condo. Two brothers inherited a one-bedroom condo that was like 550,000, and they told me they spent like 35,000 in probate fees. And so that's lawyers, that's court filings. Sometimes you have to hire what's called a probate referee, essentially an appraiser, sometimes an appraiser of the house, sometimes appraiser of the, cars or whatever. And it's just sad
Yeah.
because that's real hard money. So when you're looking at $2 million houses, I mean, that cost of probate goes up. And it's not even just the cost, it is the time. It's a very litigious process. You have to file, documents at each stage. Everything has to be accounted for. I mean, you have to walk through the house and account for every, figurine in the house, because essentially the court is trying to protect anyone who has a right to that estate and know that something wasn't given away when it was really worth $5,000 and you were trying to screw someone else or something.
So how do you prevent that from happening? Just then honoring there being the trust and having one person most likely run the show?
No, it doesn't even matter. It's just you have to have the trust. You have to have a trust. Probate is a legal process to protect. So you have to put something in the paper saying the person died. It has to run so many weeks, things like that. Because what if there's some, half sibling that wasn't in the will? Yeah. But they're entitled to something. Yeah. I mean, there's a half sibling that
me handy when that stuff.
Yeah, so someone
can come the internet for obituaries, and they're like,
they come out of the woodworks and say that they're entitled to something, and then that's a whole part of the court process. So
oh gosh,
I think the average time the shortest time for probate is typically 12 months. That's when it's super. Everyone gets along. No one has any issues with who gets what. It takes a year. So, they can take upwards of 5 years. 5 years of your time. It's a nightmare. So avoid probate, people. Get that living trust.
Yeah, I didn't fortunately have that. And like I said, I will say my father was very organized. But when I connected with you and in the time span of that episode, I had two friends whose parents did. One went to assisted living and one passed. So it's like the speed of light, this stuff's happening, and to just be prepared for it. So if you do drop, in the chat section, next chapter, we'll take care of you, whether you want the journal or the book.
I'll give one of each and just tell me which journal you want.
Well, there we go. I love it. I love it. And then the other thing is, through the conversation where we connected just to get to know one another on how we wanted to do this podcast, we were talking about class reunion and just the whole concept behind it and being around the same age. Well, I won't, but you're younger than me, but still close enough.
1 year. We were the same. Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it was this whole thing of, gosh, it is an interesting look back and talking to these classmates that you had an impression of, and how we're all in this vulnerable state in our lives where we can share where we are and who we are at this point without reservation. So has it changed your perspective on relationships that you have with your friends? Has it made you want to open up the conversation a little bit more with friends that you went to high school with?
Well, it's interesting. So I went to a pretty small private school. So there was 90 kids in our graduating class, and very academic, and if you weren't graduating going to Ivy League school, you were super down. And my brother, who was graduated your year, went to Ivy League, and I didn't quite make that cut. So I really had a lot of, kind of shame that I wasn't smart enough and I, wasn't good enough and blah, blah, blah. And so I stayed in touch with people for a little while at the beginning, and then I really pulled back. I just didn't want to be around that. But within the last couple of years, I've reconnected with a couple girlfriends, and it's so startling to hear the things that they were and I'm like, wait, we were like best friends, and and how did I not know that? And they would say the same about me. So I have loved listening to your podcast, and I so resonated with your best friend, and I can't believe I'm blanking on her name, but
Nancy,
and talking about how what some teachers had said to her that stuck with her. Like I was like, oh my gosh, I've spent so much of my adult life hearing you're stupid, and I'd be like, I'm not. So I love listening to it because it just makes me realize, gosh, we really all had our stuff from that time in our life. And so reconnecting at the odd class reunion, oh, everything's so great. Oh, good. Oh, how are you? It's like, really, that's all a bunch of garbage. So I will definitely be going to my next class reunion, and I'll try and keep it more real because I think we're all kind of softening our memories a little bit in the sense of like, God, we really were all going through our stuff. But your podcast is just, I mean, everything about it just brings me back so many little things.
And your classmates would be cool to interview because the pressure that everyone must have felt and been under, right? Or I would imagine even like also having the most elaborate weddings, like who, where you had your wedding must have been a big deal, that kind of thing. I can see where.
Oh, and they're all like wildly successful. So for years, I was embarrassed to say I was even a realtor. I mean, when, my first husband was a professional athlete, and somehow I felt like, oh, I could go to the reunion because I married, someone successful. Like that was such the big deal. And, and then we got divorced and I was a realtor. And then I'm like,
right.
And my now husband is, he's a retired police officer, but he, one of the first reunions I went to, I said, please don't tell anyone what you do for work. Let's just try not talk.
Did you really?
But that's the world I grew up in.
Yes.
So I grew up in Atherton, California. If anyone knows, I mean, it's really affluent. And my parents were like salt of the earth. I mean, God, my parents would always drop off gifts at the fire station and the police station every Christmas. And, it was like, but that was just not our world.
They probably had generational wealth themselves, probably grew up with that.
My parents not as much, but a lot of the other. I mean, most of my friends were trust fund babies, you know, for sure. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them are super awesome people, but it was a weird thing. Like I never wanted to be a nurse, but I always thought like, if I heard someone wanted to be a nurse, I was like, why aren't you a doctor? Because in my world, the women would be the doctor. You wouldn't have been a nurse. And so when I grew up, like with my ex-husband, moving around, meeting all these different people, like, you're a nurse. Why aren't you a doctor? Because it just wasn't what we grew up thinking was okay. You had to be something really big. So anyway, I'm definitely more comfortable in my skin now, especially with my best-selling book. My parents, it's like all of a sudden to my parents, I was like, okay, but
yes, I mean, just to get, just to take that leap and do it is incredible. So
I love hearing your stories. I just want to say thank you for doing that because it's such a great podcast, and we all are just finding our way still.
we are finding our way. And I want to thank you because I do think that you've taken that conversation of a family member to another level. And, we all have to have that conversation, whether we like it or not, to be more prepared for the next chapter. So I'm so glad to have you on. And we're going to continue on this discussion ourselves. That's the best part of meeting people and connecting and having conversations. We're just going to stay friends. And I thank you so, so much. And best of luck to this year and helping other families. All right.
Keep going with the podcast. I love it.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks. We'll see you on the next episode of Class Reunion.
All right, friends. That's it for this episode of Class Reunion Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show, write us a review, and share this podcast with a friend. Until next time.